Alright, today as promised we are going to be talking about trig word problems. There's two types, angle of elevation and angle of depression. First we're going to start off with angle of elevation. The angle of elevation is always the angle that is formed by the horizontal line and that angle of, let's say, an observer is looking up. So do you see in this picture, I have the observer here, and what is it looking up at? It looks like a hot air balloon. So right here, I can label this as my angle of elevation. So it's always the horizontal line and the angle of looking up at an object. Alright, the angle of depression is a little bit different. Your observer, is going to be in the sky. So they're going to be in a hot air balloon. They're going to be on a cliff. They're going to be in an airplane. Something like that. It's that horizontal line if the person was looking directly straight out. And the angle that is formed by looking straight down at an object. So that horizontal as if the person was looking straight out, and the angle that is formed by it looking down at an object. Depression is a little bit more interesting. Look at this horizontal line. What do you notice about that horizontal line and the ground? Couldn't I put an arrow on these lines and mark them parallel? So if my angle of depression is here, what other angle is congruent with that angle? Well, if these lines are parallel, this angle and this angle would be considered congruent because what are these? Alternate interior angles. Okay? So remember, angle of depression is when we have a horizontal line looking straight out and a line looking down. The angle is right there, and those lines are parallel, so you always will have alternate interior angles. Alright, look at this picture. It says describe angle 1 and 2 as they relate to the situation shown. Well, it looks like I have an airplane and a tower. Well, if I'm looking at this angle 1, it looks like it goes out straight horizontally and then the angle is looking down. So I would have to say angle 1 is an angle of depression. From the plane to the tower. Looking at angle 2, it looks like I have to look upward to look at the plane. So angle 2 would be the angle of elevation. From the tower to the plane. Alright, next we're actually going to try some word problems and draw some pictures. Alright, let's read this word problem. You sight a rock climber on a cliff at a 32-degree angle of elevation. The horizontal ground distance to the cliff is 1,000 feet. Find the line of sight distance to the rock climber. Draw a picture. Okay, so it looks like I have a person on the ground and they are looking upward at a rock climber. Okay, they're hanging out on a cliff. Here is my person on the ground. Okay. Let's finish our horizontal line distance. And our vertical distance. So my picture should look something like this. Of course, we got to put in our right angle. Alright, let's fill out the information. It said it was at a 32 degree angle of elevation. So that means this angle down here would be 32 degrees. That's how it's a horizontal line and how the person is looking up. It also says that the horizontal ground distance is 1,000 feet. Okay, so that just means that this side would be 1,000 feet. I want to find the line of sight distance to the rock climber. So how far is it for the person looking up at the other rock climber? So that would be x. Which trig function would we have to use here? Remember, so, ka, toa. Well, if I look at this angle, this is the angle I'm going from, it appears that I have the adjacent side and the hypotenuse. So I must use the cosine. So I'm going to say cosine 32 equals x over 1,000. Okay, how do I solve for x? We're going to have to multiply both sides by 1,000. But in your calculators, please type 1,000 times cosine 32. And we should get 848. Okay, on to the next. Okay, let's read this word problem. Brian's kite is flying above a field at the end of a 65 meter of string. If the angle of elevation to the kite measures 70 degrees, how high is the kite above Brian's head? Okay, so if I have a person, Brian, and we talked about this yesterday, they are flying a kite. It says it wants to know, well, let's draw the rest of my triangle. So here I have my horizontal distance, and here I have my vertical. It says the angle of elevation is 70 degrees, so that would be this angle here. It said that they're flying a kite 65 meters of string, so your string would be 65 meters here. What am I trying to find? How high is the kite above Brian's head? So how high above the head is is the kite? So that would be this thing here. All right, what trig function would we have to use? Well, the 65 is your hypotenuse, and the x that I'm trying to find is the opposite side. So, given the opposite and the hypotenuse, it's like I want to use sine. So I'm going to say sine of 70 equals x over 65. We're going to have to solve for x here, so we're going to multiply both sides by 65. So that cancels out, so x equals, in your calculators, please type 65 times sine 70. And we should get 61. Let's round this one to one decimal place, so 61.0 meters would be my final answer. Alright, I think we're ready to try angle of depression. Alright, let's read this one. It says, from the top of a vertical cliff. Well, if I have a vertical cliff 40 meters high, let's go ahead and draw a vertical line and label it 40 meters. It says the angle of depression of an object that is level with the base of the cliff is 34 degrees. So this is angle of depression. So that means I have something up top. And they just said the word object, so I'll just write object. Remember, angle of depression, It is this horizontal line as if you were looking directly out, and the angle formed with it as I was looking straight down. Let's draw the rest of my right triangle. Here's my right angle. And then it said the angle of depression was 34, so that means that this angle right here is 34 degrees. Well, remember, anytime you have angle of depression, this line and this line are parallel. So if this is 34 degrees, this angle here and this angle here are congruent because they are alternate interior angles. So this angle will also be 34 degrees. Alright, what am I trying to find? How far is the object, okay, here's my object up here, from the base of the ellipse. So I'm going to have to label this x. Alright, what's trig function? Well, look at this angle within my triangle, 34. Unfortunately, this 34 up here is not going to help us. That's why we have to use these alternate interior angles. So, if I go from this angle here, it looks like I have the opposite side, and I have the hypotenuse, so I must have to use sine. So we're going to say sine of 34 equals 40 over x. Well, I'm going to have to get x out of the denominator so we can multiply both sides by x. These cancel, so I'm left with x times the sine of 34 equals 40. Solve for x, so we're going to have to divide by sine of 34. So these cancel out, so I get x equals, let's put that in our calculator, 40 divided by sine of 34. And we should get 71.5. Let's round to the nearest decimal point, so 0.5, nearest tenth. And it looks like my units were meters. Okay? Alright, let's look at this problem. An airline pilot sights a life raft at 26 degrees at a 26 degree angle of depression. The airplane's altitude is 3 kilometers. What is the airplane's surface distance from the raft? Draw a picture. Okay, so it looks like I have an airplane and a raft. So of course my airplane is up in the sky somewhere. Of course I have lovely drawings always. Here is my airplane, and it's sighting a raft down here. Okay, so it's looking downward at that raft. Alright, let's draw the rest of our right triangle. Remember, we have to dot out, since this is angle of depression, that horizontal distance. I can drop down my vertical. And draw in that horizontal. Okay, let me fix this up a little bit. Okay, here's my picture. We need to put on our right angle where it belongs. And I got to figure out this 26 degree angle of depression. Well, that is as if the airplane is looking straight out, and the angle formed with them looking down. So right here is 26 degrees. So if this is 26 degrees, we're going to have to label this 26 degrees because we need an angle within the triangle in order to solve these problems. What does it mean by the airline's altitude, 3 kilometers? What would I label 3? Well, that means the distance above the ground, so this would be 3 kilometers. It says, what is the airplane's surface distance from the raft? The keyword right here was surface, right? So we want to know, what is this distance along the surface to the graph? So here would be my answer. I'm looking at my triangle and this angle here. Which trig function would I need to use? Well, this one would be opposite, and this would be adjacent. So that would be a tangent problem. So I'm going to say tangent of 26 equals 3 over x. This is one of those problems where we have to multiply both sides by x. Cancel out, so I'm left with x times the tangent of 26 equals 3. Divide by tangent 26 on both sides. So go ahead and put that in your calculator. So we're going to type in 3 divided by tangent 26. Enter. It looks like my distance x would equal 6.2, and the units on this are kilometers. Okay. Alright, let's look at this one. An airplane is flying at a height of 2 miles above the ground. The distance measured along the ground from a point directly below the airplane to the airport is 5 miles. What is the angle of depression from the airplane to the airport? Okay, so it looks like I have up in the sky an airplane. And down here is the airport. So I'm just going to write airport. Alright, that first key phrase, an airport is flying at a height of 2 miles above ground. So if it's talking height, that would be this as 2 miles. Here is my right angle. And then it said the distance measured along the ground. So that's key words, right? So I'm talking about along the ground from a point directly below the airport. Okay, so here's a point directly below that airplane to the airport. So this would be my 5 miles. Okay, it wants me to find the angle of depression from the airplane to the airport. So anytime it's angle depression, we got a dot in this line. I don't know the angle this time, so this angle that's formed by looking straight out and looking straight down would be x. Well, if this is x, this angle down here is x. So which trig function can I use on this? It looks like opposite and adjacent. So that must mean tangent. So I'm going to write tangent x equals 2 over 5. We got to get this x by itself. This time we're trying to find the angle. Every time I'm trying to find an angle, I have to use the inverse. So we're going to take the tangent inverse of both sides. I'm left with x on this side because the inverse undoes that tangent. And so let's put in the calculator. Second tan to bring up that inverse. 2 divided by 5. Alright, since it's an angle, this time I'm going to round to the nearest whole number. So I would get 22 to the 3. Alright, let's look at another one. Okay, it says find the measure of the angle of elevation from the sun when a 6-foot vertical post casts a shadow of 8 feet long. Okay, so I'm going to have a post, vertical post, and it's going to be casting a shadow. So I need the other parts of my right triangle. Alright, 6-foot vertical post. So that means this part would be 6 feet. Here's my right angle. And it casts an 8-foot shadow. So here is my shadow. It wants me to find the angle of elevation. So that would mean this horizontal line looking straight up. So this would be my angle of elevation. Well, what trig function would we want to use on this one? Tangent. Tangent of x equals 6/8. Of course, we are going to have to use the inverse because we're solving for an angle. I said find the angle of elevation. So in our calculators, we need to write tan inverse 6 divided by 8. So I would get x equals 37 degrees. I rounded up to 37 degrees. Okay, great. Alright, this is going to be our last slide, so you won't have to worry about that next one. Let's read it. A ramp is 60 feet long. It rises a vertical distance of 8 feet. Find the measure of the angle of elevation. Okay, please draw a picture that's very similar to mine. If it says the ramp is 60 feet long, that means we're going to label this part, my ramp, 60 feet. Make sure to draw in the right angle in your picture. If it says it rises a vertical distance of 8 feet, remember vertical would be this distance here. So let's label this 8 feet. I'm trying to find the measure of the angle of elevation. So where would I put my x? Well, it's this distance and then looking up, so my x would go here. What trig function is going to help us find that angle? Well, it looks like my 8 feet is the opposite side, and the 60 is the hypotenuse. So what trig function is that? That's my sine. I'm going to say sine x equals 8 divided by 60. In order to get rid of this sine, in order to find my angle, I'm going to have to take the inverse of both sides. Let's go ahead and write sine inverse of both sides. Go ahead, type in your calculator. Sine inverse 8 divided by 60. Hit enter. We hit 7.6. Since this is an angle, we're going to round to the nearest whole number. So this will round out to 8 degrees. Excellent. Now you guys are going to work on some practice. All of the answers are on Schoology if you want to take a look. Have a great weekend. I will see you.